Hail fell like shattered diamonds over the floating city of Ethelberg, a settlement suspended in the sky where mortals lived in the shadow of beings woven from storm and song. At the city's edge, in a modest spire wrapped in quiet, a man who had lost everything stood by his crystalline window, watching the rings of the gas giant Ignis shimmer through the icy downpour. He didn't know that a single act of mercy, offered without hope of reward, would soon alter fate itself. He didn't know that two faint, fragile heartbeats lying on his rain-slicked landing platform would awaken a power older than the stars. And he certainly didn't know that. By sunrise, an Archon would stand before him, bringing not vengeance, but something far more dangerous. Kalen Vance had made peace with solitude. 3 years had passed since the solar flare that claimed his wife. Ilara, leaving him alone with their son Leo, in a city that murmured about him but never truly conversed with him. To them, he was an outsider, the mortal stonemason in a domain ruled by the storm singers. Tonight, the gale was brutal. Kalen worked late in his small studio, finding solace in the resonant stone that hummed to him in ways mortal voices no longer could. Then he heard it, a whimper so faint he almost mistook it for the wind whipping through the city's support cables. Outside, near his energy conduit, he found them. 2 creatures no larger than house cats. Their forms were made of swirling coalesced nebula, crusted with rime, their enormous amethyst eyes filled with desperate hope, stormling whelps abandoned and dying. Every rational thought screamed for him to walk away. The law was absolute. Any mortal who interfered with the storm singers faced exile or disintegration, but as he looked at them shimmering weakly in the hail, Kalen ignored the law. He gathered the whelps into his arms. They were impossibly light, radiating a chill deeper than any storm, the cold of creatures whose inner lightning was fading. Inside, he set them near the thermal core, wrapping the smaller one against his bare chest to share his warmth. Hours crawled by. Gradually their breathing steadied. The larger nuzzled his hand and the smaller made soft, grateful chimes against his skin. Then came dawn and the knock. 3 resonant chimes shook the door, followed by a voice that seemed to carry the weight of galaxies. "Open the door, mortal. I know you have them." While the city around them still slept, something primordial had awakened, something that drew power from cosmic winds and solar flares and now stood at his threshold, radiating energy that made the air vibrate. Kalen opened the door, and there she was, myth made flesh. She stood over 6 feet tall, wrapped in robes of woven starlight and flowing cobalt that moved like liquid night. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if constellations lay just beneath, and her eyes, those same brilliant amethyst as the whelps, burned with impossible age and power. Hair the color of a neutron star spilled down her back, and iridescent star-like freckles gleamed along her neck and arms like distant suns. "You are Kalen Vance," she said. It was not a question. "And you have something that belongs to me." Behind him came 2 joyful chimes. The woman's expression broke, cold majesty cracking into raw emotion. She swept past him, falling to her knees and gathering both whelps into trembling arms. "My children," she whispered, pressing them close. "My precious children." Tears, faintly glowing silver, traced down her cheeks as she rocked them gently. "They were stolen from my birthing chamber 3 nights ago," she said, voice rough with exhaustion. "Taken by those who fear my bloodline. I searched across 3 sectors and found them here alive because of you." Kalen hesitated. They were freezing. "I couldn't leave them." Her eyes met his, fierce yet softened. "No, you could not." She rose, studying him with the weight of eons. "That makes you either the bravest mortal I've ever met or the most foolish. Do you understand the laws you've broken? The Conclave will demand your exile when they learn you touched Stormsinger's royalty." "I wasn't interfering," Kalen said quietly. "I was saving children." Something flickered in her gaze then, surprise, maybe even respect. The whelps chimed again, nestling closer to her as the light from the core flickered across all 3. The smaller whelp stretched out a tiny, shimmering tendril toward Kalen. Seraphina's breath caught. "That is unexpected," she murmured. "Nimbus has marked you." Her eyes glimmered, studying the faint constellation pattern on Kalen's wrist where the whelp had touched him. "Stormsingers mark only those they trust, those they claim as kin. You've made quite an impression, Stonemason." Straightening, she spoke with regal weight. I am Seraphina Lightweaver, Archon of the Outer Reaches and Sovereign of the Storm Courts. I owe you a life debt. Name your price. Kalen shook his head. I don't want payment. I just wanted them safe. Seraphina's gaze softened, though her tone remained steady. Everyone wants something. I see grief in your eyes. What did you lose? My wife, Kalen said quietly. 3 years ago. A solar flare near the orbital lane. A heavy silence settled between them, an unspoken understanding, born of shared loss. Then Seraphina's expression darkened. Those who stole my children will soon learn I found them here. They will come to silence witnesses. She took a breath. I can offer protection, but it requires you to come to my citadel. You and your son both. I can't leave, Kalen replied. This is our home. Seraphina looked around the small spire. Resonant stone walls, a single luminescent orb flickering in the cold. Home, she repeated softly, almost wistful. I remember homes like this centuries ago, when trust still existed between our peoples. Now there are only laws and borders. She turned toward the door, pausing in the threshold. The life debt stands. If you ever need anything, leave a message at the Storm Singers Exchange. Tell them you seek the Lightweaver. I will come. At the platform's edge, wings of cobalt and silver light unfurled, vast and luminous against the dawn. In a single fluid motion, she transformed, a being of breathtaking power made of storm and star stuff, and soared skyward with her whelps secured within her aura. Kalen watched until she vanished into the clouds, unable to shake the feeling that everything had changed. But in the high citadels of the Storm Singers, far from Ethelberg, nobles who had orchestrated the whelp's abduction were already plotting their next move, one that would endanger the stonemason and everyone he loved. 3 days passed. The first warning came on a crystal shard, its point buried deep in Kalen's studio door. Remain silent about what you witnessed, and you may see another cycle. Speak of it, and the solar flare that took your wife will seem merciful. The second message arrived through the exchange, sealed with Seraphina's sigil. The conclave asks questions. Rumors spread. Some suspect mortal involvement. Keep your son close and trust no one. I will help where I can, but politics bind my hands. Be careful. That night, after Leo had fallen asleep, there was a soft, hurried knock at the door. Kalen opened it to find a young Stormsinger woman, bronze star freckles glinting along her cheekbones, amber eyes wide with fear. My name is Iris, she said. I serve the Archon. I came to warn you. The nobles who took the whelps know a mortal was involved. They're closing in. They plan to drag you before the conclave, accuse you of kidnapping, fabricate evidence. The penalty is disintegration. Seraphina would never allow that, Kalen said. Iris shook her head. She can't defend you without admitting you matter to her, and that would be used against her rule. And her children. Her voice dropped to a whisper. But there might be another way. The Archon, she's been asking about you constantly. I think she's starting to feel something for you. If the bond is real, she could offer you formal protection, but only if you go to her, to the outer reaches, and let her claim you publicly before the courts. A distant chorus of harmonic shrieks echoed through the city. Void stalkers. Bred for hunting mortals, Iris's face went pale. They're here. We have to go now. Kalen didn't hesitate. He gathered Leo from his bed, threw a few essentials into a pack, and followed Iris into the storm-lashed night. Behind them, energy lances flickered up the struts toward the spire. Ahead lay danger, uncertainty, and the ancient halls of the Storm Singers. As they rode a grav sled hard through the floating asteroid fields, Kalen couldn't stop thinking of Seraphina, the strength in her voice, the grief in her eyes, the warmth she'd shown her children. There had been something between them that night, something fragile yet undeniable. And far to the galactic north, in her citadel of lightning and crystal, Archon Seraphina stood at her window, staring toward the distant nebula. She wondered if the mortal who had saved her children possessed the courage to come when she could not call, to trust when every law demanded fear. If he came, she would not claim him as a mere subject under her protection, but as something far more dangerous, an equal, a partner in whatever fragile future they might dare to build together. 2 brutal days later, they cleared the final asteroid belt, Kalen stopped, breath caught in his throat. Before them spread the Stormsinger's citadel, towers of living crystal and captured starlight spiraling in defiance of physics, bridges of solidified light connecting their peaks. Structures grown from massive, resonant geodes glowed with internal energy, casting prismatic shadows across avenues paved with fused meteorite glass. The citadel pulsed beneath the starlight. Stormsingers moved through its impossible architecture, some in humanoid form, others as vast winged entities of pure energy, their forms catching the light of distant suns. At the heart of the complex rose the palace, grown directly from a central asteroid. Waterfalls of liquid light cascaded from its tiers, glowing with a cold blue plasma, and at its summit burned a single eternal vortex, cobalt laced with silver. "That's the heart of the tempest," Iris said softly as they descended toward it. "As long as it spins, the Archon holds true authority over the storm courts." By the time they reached the citadel gates, night had fully fallen. The streets glowed with plasma lamps and drifting orbs of captured starlight, painting the sky in shifting colors. Stormsingers paused as they passed, some curious, others hostile. Whispered voices followed them like echoes. At the palace gates, armored sentinels barred their path. Iris drew herself up, her posture sharp and formal. Iris Sunspec. "Of the Archon's household," she announced. "I bring Kalen Vance and his son under royal escort. The Archon expects them." The guards exchanged wary glances before one stepped aside. "They're your responsibility, Sunspec." Inside, the palace defied reason. The air shimmered with floating notes of harmonic energy. Walls of obsidian and crystal pulsed faintly with living light. Carvings along the corridors shifted and moved, depicting Stormsinger history and flowing, animated relief. Servants bowed as they passed, some Stormsingers, others mortal, the latter marked by thin, silver armbands denoting their bonded status. Iris guided Kalen and Leo up a spiraling ramp that opened onto colossal doors, carved with Stormsingers locked in eternal dance. "This is the audience chamber," she whispered. "The Archon holds court tonight. What you're about to do will shock everyone." Her amber eyes met his. "Show respect, but not submission. Stormsingers value strength and dignity. Walk carefully. No pressure." She hesitated, then added quietly, "When you see her, remember she's not only a ruler, she's a mother who almost lost her children. Someone who saw something in you that reminded her why peace between our peoples is still worth fighting for." The great door swung open. The chamber beyond was vast, its ceiling lost to a simulated nebula, its pillars carved from black stone and veined with molten light. Dozens of Stormsinger nobles stood in their humanoid forms, draped in shimmering finery that caught the flicker of energy. Conversations stilled. Every gaze turned toward the mortals who dared enter. At the far end of the hall, upon a dais of white quartz, sat Archon Seraphina Lightweaver. She was radiant and terrible, robed in cobalt and silver that seemed to breathe with living energy. A circlet of black meteorite and sapphires gleamed in her star-white hair, and in her hand she held a rod crowned with a vortex that spun without sound. For a moment, she was every inch the legend, the unassailable sovereign of Stormsingers. Then her eyes found Kalen. The mask slipped. Surprise, relief, a rush of emotion too swift to name. She recovered in an instant, but he had seen it. That flicker of something real beneath the circlet. A noble near the dais stiffened. "Your Grace," he said sharply, "there are mortals in the audience chamber." Seraphina didn't even glance his way. "I can see that." "Lord Blackstone," she replied, her voice carrying easily through the silence. "And one carries a child." "That suggests a petition, not an invasion." A ripple of murmurs swept the room. Blackstone flushed but dared not press further. Kalen recognized the name immediately. It was the same one signed beneath the first threat. "Approach," Seraphina commanded. Kalen took Leo's small hand and began the long walk down the center of the hall. Dozens of Stormsinger eyes followed them, expressions ranging from curiosity to disgust. He did not bow. He kept his shoulders square, his gaze steady. "Your Grace," he said, voice clear, "I am Kalen Vance of Ethelberg. I come seeking sanctuary for myself and my son. Under the ancient laws you established generations ago." The chamber exploded in noise. Stormsinger shouted in outrage, Blackstone's voice rising above them all. "Absurd! A mortal cannot invoke sanctuary. The very notion." is grounded in laws older than any of you, Serafina cut in, her voice slicing through the uproar like a blade. Laws I forged to keep the powerful from destroying those who seek justice. The Archon rose, descending from her dais until she stood before Kalen, close enough that he could see the faint constellations beneath her skin, smell the scent of ozone and solar wind. You claim sanctuary, she said softly. From what? From assassins sent by nobles who wished to silence me, Kalen answered. From false accusations of kidnapping royal children I found dying in the hail. I'm running from a world where kindness is treated as a crime. The chamber fell utterly silent. Serafina's expression softened, voice barely above a whisper. You saved royal children. Your children, your grace, Orion and Nimbus. 3 nights ago. He met her gaze steadily. And I seek protection because the ones who stole them now want me dead. Because my son deserves safety. Because you told me to seek the Lightweaver if I ever needed anything. His voice grew stronger, conviction burning beneath every word. Because I still believe there's justice in this world, even for a stonemason standing before Stormsinger's courts. For the second time, the mask of the Archon faltered. In Serafina's eyes flickered that same raw vulnerability, something mortal, fragile and dangerous. Serafina turned to face the assembly, her voice calm but edged with controlled fury. This mortal speaks truth, she declared. My children were stolen by traitors who sought to use royal blood as leverage for their own ambitions. This man found them, dying in the hail, and saved them. He asked for nothing. And now those same traitors send assassins to silence the only witness. Her words hung in the air like thunder after lightning. She studied the nobles carefully. Several faces had paled. Blackstone's was carved in stone. So yes, she continued, her tone rising with power. I grant sanctuary. To Kalen Vance and his son I extend the full protection of my house and authority. If any here would challenge this, step forward now. No one moved. Blackstone's composure finally cracked. Desperation bled through his voice. Your Grace, this sets a dangerous precedent. To grant sanctuary based on unverified claims. To elevate a mortal without proper inquiry. All on emotional grounds. Emotional grounds. Serafina's tone was suddenly lethal. The vortex atop her rod roared brighter, silver light spilling across the hall as the energy in the room spiked. Is that what you call protecting innocent lives? Honoring the debt owed to the one who saved royal heirs? She took a step toward him, eyes burning with inner lightning. Tell me, Blackstone, what is it that makes you tremble? I can smell guilt on you. I can taste your fear. What are you hiding? He faltered, searching for words. Nothing. Your Grace, I only... Because if you were involved in stealing my children, she interrupted, her voice low and deadly. This would be an excellent time to confess before I unleash a full investigation into your house and all its dealings. Blackstone's eyes darted toward the exits. None of his supposed allies met his gaze. I acted only in what I believed were the best interests of your ambitions, he stammered. Guards, Serafina said coldly. Arrest Lord Blackstone and all members of his house present. They will answer for their crimes against the crown. The hall erupted into chaos. Guards surged forward as Blackstone's allies tried to flee, only to find the exit sealed by blazing energy fields. Through it all, Serafina stood unmoved, a pillar of composure amid the storm. When the last of the traitors had been shackled and silence fell again, she turned back to Kalen. Her voice softened. You came, she said quietly. You actually came. Kalen managed a small, weary smile. You said you'd protect us. I believed you. Most wouldn't have, she admitted. Most would assume a Stormsinger's promise means nothing. But you trusted me, and that trust may have saved both our lives. He shrugged slightly. Fair trade. Then, a rare smile curved her lips, genuine, warm, disarming. I think we have very different definitions of fairness, she said, but I prefer yours. Her hand came to rest on his shoulder, light, almost absent-minded, but the gesture did not go unnoticed. Whispers rippled through the chamber like harmonic feedback. Serafina straightened, addressing the nobles still present. This audience is concluded. Kalen Vance and his son are under my personal protection, housed within the palace itself. Any who approach them with hostility will answer directly to me. As Iris guided them through the glowing corridors toward their new quarters, the whispers grew louder behind them. Kalen felt the weight of what had just occurred. He had wagered everything on an Archon's word, and impossibly, it had worked. But he knew he had traded one danger for another. He was safe from assassins now, but trapped in the beating heart of Stormsinger politics, under the protection of a ruler who looked at him with something far more complicated than gratitude. 3 months passed. Leo adapted quickly, making friends with the servants' children and young Stormsingers who practiced energy manipulation in the palace conservatories. The nobles who had once sneered at Kalen now treated him with cautious respect, recognizing the Archon's favor. Kalen learned to navigate the court's subtleties, attending council sessions where Seraphina sought his mortal perspective, sitting beside her at formal receptions, his every word and movement observed. They were rarely alone. Every glance was analyzed, every interaction dissected. But on quiet nights, long after the court had retired, there would come a gentle harmonic chime at his door. Seraphina. No circlet. No ceremonial robes. Just a woman seeking refuge from the weight of her throne. They would sit by the plasma hearth, talking for hours. About Stormsinger history that stretched across millennia. About stonework and creation. About Ilara. Grief and learning to live after loss. One night, as the energy flickered over her features, Seraphina said softly, "I envy you sometimes. Mortals love so completely, even knowing how brief your lives are. My kind. We bond for politics, for alliances, for bloodlines. Pure love is rare among Stormsingers." Kalen looked at her. "Have you ever loved someone?" A shadow crossed her expression. "Once, centuries ago, a commander who fought beside me. We had 50 years, an instant to my kind. He fell in a skirmish, and I swore I'd never risk that pain again. Better to rule alone than feel that loss a second time." Her voice trembled for the first time. She turned to him, eyes luminous in the hearthlight. "And now I'm terrified I've broken that vow, because when I imagine losing you, when I think of those assassins succeeding, it feels exactly like losing him." That same hollow fear. Kalen reached out, taking her hand. Her skin was warm and vibrated softly against his palm. "I'm terrified too," he whispered. Kalen's voice was quiet, almost hesitant. "I never thought I'd feel anything beyond grief for Ilara," he said. "But you've made me want to live again, not just survive." He let out a shaky breath. "That terrifies me, Seraphina. You're immortal. I'm not. Even if what we have is real, I'll be gone in the blink of an eye, at least by your standards." "Don't." Her voice broke on the word. She reached for him, eyes shining in the energy light. "Don't think about that. Can't we just have this, whatever this is, for as long as it lasts?" He nodded slowly. "Yeah, we can have this." Seraphina knelt beside his chair, her face level with his. One hand rose to cup his cheek, the touch gentle, uncertain. "I don't know how to do this," she whispered. "How to want someone without politics involved. How to kiss someone simply because I need their warmth." Kalen smiled faintly. "I'm not sure I remember either. Maybe we figure it out together." Their lips met, softly at first, uncertain, testing the boundaries of something neither fully understood. Then Kalen's hand slid into her star-white hair and the kiss deepened. Seraphina made a small trembling sound, surprise and relief and need intertwined. Her skin was warm and electric wherever they touched. When they finally broke apart, foreheads resting together, Seraphina's whisper trembled against his skin. "This changes everything." "I know. The courts will never accept it," she said. "An Archon and a mortal, they'll see it as weakness, as betrayal." "Let them," Kalen said simply. She gave a soft, incredulous laugh. "You say that so easily. Their opinions don't matter to you." "No," he said. "What matters is you, me, Leo, your children, the people who actually matter. The rest is just noise. The rest," she said quietly, "is my dominion, my duty. And those matter too," he replied. "I'm just saying maybe there's room for both. Maybe you can be Archon and still be someone who falls in love. Those don't have to cancel each other out." She stared at him, searching his face. "Falls in love," she repeated softly. "Is that what this is?" "What else would you call it?" Seraphina's lips curved into a trembling smile. "Madness, impossibility, the worst political decision I've ever made." Silver, tears welled in her eyes. "And the best thing that's happened to me in 300 years." She kissed him again, deeper this time. And Kalen felt the last walls around his heart begin to crumble. Elara would always be part of him. But Serafina was teaching him something new. That the heart could love more than once. That survival could transform into truly living. When dawn began to paint the sky with light from the system's primary star, Serafina reluctantly stood. "I have to go before the palace wakes," she said softly. "But Kalen, I don't want this to be a secret forever. Sooner or later I need to acknowledge what's between us publicly." He nodded grimly. "And when you do, all hell breaks loose. Conservatives will demand abdication. Radicals will claim storm singers are weakening. Mortals will panic over treaties." Serafina exhaled slowly. "So what do? "We prepare," Kalen said. "Find allies among nobles who value honor over tradition. Expose Blackstone's crimes thoroughly. Make yourself and me indispensable to the courts." She smiled, something mischievous flickering in her eyes. "Let's start with you teaching me stonework." Kalen blinked. "What?" "You're setting up a studio tomorrow," she said. "You'll create pieces that blend mortal craftsmanship and Stormsinger design, sculptures, architecture, things that represent unity. I'm commissioning you to redesign parts of the palace to be shared spaces, places where our peoples meet as equals." Kalen laughed softly. "That's brilliant. It gives me a role beyond being your whatever I am." "What do you want to be?" she asked. "Someone who matters to you. Everything else can wait." Her gaze softened. "You already are someone who matters. Now we make sure everyone else recognizes that." She left as dawn broke, the first rays of sunlight spilling across the balcony. Kalen stood at the window, watching the light flood the citadel's impossible towers. For the first time in years, he felt something he thought long lost. Happiness. Whatever came next, they would face it together. 6 months later, Kalen stood in his new studio within the palace, a breathtaking space of resonant stone and crystal, overlooking both the Stormsinger Citadel and the distant mortal habitats beyond the asteroid field. Around him, his latest project took shape. A vast council table crafted from mortal quarried stone and Stormsinger forged crystal, its surface inlaid with a design telling the story of both peoples. Leo burst through the doors, now 8 and utterly at home in the palace. "Dad, Orion and Nimbus want to help etch." Kalen chuckled. "Tell them yes, but carefully. Last time Nimbus got excited, he destabilized half the inlay." The 2 adolescent Stormsingers bounded in, no longer helpless whelps but bright, energetic youths, their forms shimmering with contained energy, wings of light strong and sure. These months had brought unprecedented change. Kalen's studio had become a hub of collaboration, where Stormsinger and mortal artisans worked side by side, blending their crafts, breaking old barriers through shared creation. Their work had come to symbolize something greater, the fragile but growing cooperation Serafina had fought so hard to build. The political landscape had shifted too. Blackstone and his co-conspirators were tried and exiled, and though their downfall left a power vacuum, it opened space for new voices, reformers, visionaries, Stormsingers who believed that peace and partnership were not weakness, but wisdom. The relationship between Kalen and Serafina was no longer whispered rumor. It had become an open truth. They'd been careful, strategic even, allowing the court's time to adjust. No grand declaration had been made, but everyone knew. They dined together, walked the palace conservatories side by side, debated in council chambers as equals. There was resistance, of course. Conservative nobles still murmured in corners, yet they could not argue with results. Trade between Stormsingers and mortals had flourished. Border conflicts had dwindled. The Dominion thrived as it hadn't in generations. Serafina appeared in the studio doorway, dressed in ceremonial robes of cobalt and silver. The sight of her still stole his breath, majestic, untouchable, and yet utterly mortal in the warmth of her gaze. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Today's the inauguration," Kalen smiled. "Ready? Though I still don't see why I'm needed for a furniture unveiling." She stepped closer, the faintest smile curving her lips. "Because it's symbolic," she said. "That table represents the first true union between Stormsingers and mortals, crafted by the man who earned sanctuary through courage. Your presence matters," he arched an eyebrow. "Because I built the furniture, because you built hope," she said softly, taking his hand. "Because you remind everyone that bridges can be built, that prejudice isn't destiny, and that the impossible can become real if we dare to try. The ceremony was held in the newly designed council chamber, built to accommodate both species comfortably. When the veil was lifted and the table revealed, its surface gleaming with inlaid crystal and ancient stone, the artistry of two worlds combined, there was a collective breath of awe. A southern noble approached afterward, bowing slightly. "Master Vance, your work speaks of unity in ways words cannot. I would like to commission a piece for my own halls." Soon more nobles followed suit. Kalen accepted each request with quiet grace, understanding that every commission was more than art. It was diplomacy carved in stone and light. Later, as the sun bled gold across the horizon, he and Seraphina stood together on a private balcony overlooking the glowing citadel. "I've been thinking about permanence," she said softly. His heart quickened. "Permanence?" She turned to face him, star-white hair catching the last light. "Among storm singers, bonds can be formalized, a ceremony declaring that two beings choose to unite their lives. It's our equivalent of marriage." She hesitated, voice gentling. "I wanted to warn you. I plan to ask soon, likely before the entire court. A declaration that will be written into history." Her eyes met his. "I wanted to give you a chance to run if that's too terrifying." Kalen laughed, a sound of pure joy. "Run from the woman who brought me back to life, from the future we're building, from the family we've become, me, Leo, you, Orion, Nimbus, and this whole mad household." Her lips curved into a smile. "So you'd say yes?" "I'd say yes right now," he said. "No court, no ceremony, no audience. Because these have been the happiest months of my life. Because you see me not as lesser, not as greater, just as myself. Because when I watch you rule, I'm in awe. But when you come to my studio just to talk," he smiled softly, "that's when I'm in love." She kissed him as the sun set, a kiss filled with promise and defiance, bridging species and centuries. It said more clearly than any ceremony ever could that love, once kindled, was its own kind of magic. When they parted, Seraphina rested her head on his shoulder. "They'll write symphonies about us," she murmured. "The Archon and the stonemason," Kalen chuckled. "Let them. I'll be too busy living it to care." Behind them, the palace shimmered with light and life. Mortals and storm singers walked the same halls. Children of both kinds played together in the conservatories. In studios, artisans crafted wonders that blended energy and stone, light and crystal. In council chambers, voices sought harmony instead of dominance. It wasn't perfect. Prejudice lingered. Change came slowly, but it was real. Measurable progress toward a world where species mattered less than heart, where a stonemason could love an Archon, and she could love him in return. Kalen had come to the Citadel seeking only protection. Instead, he'd found purpose, community, and a love strong enough to reshape empires. He'd learned that mercy freely given could alter not just lives, but the course of history. Standing on that balcony, Seraphina's hand in his, Kalen understood something simple and profound. Happiness wasn't found in avoiding pain or loss. It was found in choosing to love anyway, in building connection despite fear, in believing that the impossible could, one day, become ordinary life. Sometimes all it took to shift the stars was a single act of kindness, a man rescuing two freezing whelps from the hail. And sometimes, the most powerful magic wasn't in lightning or flight, but in simple decency, offered without expectation, rewarded with love that transcended form and fate alike. Kalen Vance had saved two children. In return, he had found an Archon, a future, and an ancient truth. That courage and compassion could rewrite destiny, bridging worlds that had forgotten how to touch. The epilogue of his old life had become the prologue of something new, impossible and utterly real. As starlight bloomed over the Stormsinger Citadel, Seraphina's fingers tightened around his. Kalen looked out at the horizon and believed, fully, for the first time, the future was unwritten. Together, they would craft it, patiently, bravely, and with love strong enough to endure the ages. History would remember, songs would rise, and generations to come would understand that the greatest power in any world was not might nor storm, but the willingness to see beyond differences and recognize the beating heart shared by all. In a world of storm singers and magic, that, Kalen realized, was the most powerful magic of all.